happened was at some point Gary said, hey, this new guy Benji is going to sit in on the news. And
you mentioned Stuttering John.
Oh, I was in touch with him, but I'm not really anymore. He can get pretty weird.
Were you? I never asked you about Benji, but were you ever? I don't know. Were you threatened by Benji when he joined? And I know he kind of really has taken your position there, not as well.
What happened was at some point Gary said, hey, this new guy Benji is going to sit in on the news. And we had such a well-oiled operation. Howard and Robin and me and Fred. And it was a perfect show. And everybody loved it. There was no room for improvement. There really wasn't. So all of a sudden they put this guy. I had no space at all. And all of a sudden I got this little chubby kid sitting next to me. And he's writing too. Meanwhile, I'm writing jokes. But I'm reading what I'm writing and what Fred's writing, deciding what to put up for Howard. So now I have to decide between me and Fred and what Benji's writing, which slows the process, so I had to, it just made it crazier. But I don't fault Benji because I scraped and clawed to get where I got. So I don't know whether he scraped and clawed to get there, but it was an annoyance, but it wasn't his fault at all. And that had nothing to do. I think that was Howard's agent's way of saying, look at this, we got somebody who can step right in and replace you. Nobody ever said that, but I knew better because, writing jokes was part of my thing, but leading the ball breaking and getting my balls broke myself and instigating and my good laugh, I added a lot more to the show than just my notes, which were a major thing. And there was no animosity between me and Benji. It had nothing to do with anything, so right away. And people are looking for stuff, like, oh, it's great you and Artie finally are talking again. I'm like, what are you talking about? I left in March, and Artie didn't come on the show till like October. There was no crossover whatsoever, and I was friends with a lot of the guys that they put in my seat to replace me. There was no. It was. I asked for more money from my boss, and they said no. So I went home with my football. That's not enough for people, but that's in essence what happened.
Yeah. Well, I always say, there's a Jackie era, there's an Artie era, and then there's what they're doing now. So I would call you and Artie's tied for first, and what they're doing now. Have you listened? It's just so not what I know. He's older, and the things change.
No, I don't talk. I've never listened to 1 second of it, but I don't know if I told you the last time I spoke to you, but I get ridiculous. I get fan mails from kids that weren't even born when I left the show, which is kind of hard to wrap your head around. But at one point, I got a fan email. I probably told you this already because it's still my favorite. He said, Jackie, I'm 28 years old, something like that, and I live in Toronto. And I discovered the Howard Stern show in 2007, long after I left. And he said, it immediately became my favorite show. He says, but then I found out about the old shows that were on from the 90s that were on YouTube and different places. And he said it's like having a new favorite band and finding out that their early albums were much better. I was like, whoa, I couldn't even craft that kind of compliment for myself. It's like, I love the show, but it's just a shell of its former self, which is, and that's, it's not fair to say that's a consensus, because that's the consensus of people that tell me. You know what I mean? Whether that's 1% of the people or 90% of the people, I'll never know. But for the most part, and in people's imaginations, the show gets better and better the longer time. People talk about the Channel 9 show we did like it was the epitome of television for the world. And you go back, some of the shows downright unwatchable. They were so horrible.
It is true.
But it was so much fun because we had no budget. It was like we did a radio show that was like who was that guy that did like Ed Wood? It was an Ed Wood radio show. With nothing to work with.
Well, Channel 9 shows how I got to hear you guys and see you guys, and I thought, what is this shit? I need more of it. And then the E! Show came. And it's funny you said that because I started watching a bunch of just old stuff from your era. And I think the side characters were great that you had versus, you had a Grillo and you even got a little bit of KC, but Ganji would come in, and you guys were just unrelenting. Of course, Gary. Did you ever work with Beetlejuice? Did you get a chance to have him? And did you ever write for Beetlejuice? I've met.
He was on many times before I left. There wasn't a time he walked in where I wasn't like skeeved. Like you think you're ready for what you're going to see, and you're just not. But that wasn't the show. That wasn't me and Fred being really witty and funny and quick, and Howard riffing, and that was a freak show.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was so challenged, and so I'm not Mr. Sensitive, but it was what was funny about him was that he was a circus freak.
Yeah.
You ask him to recite the Declaration of Independence, anything he says is going to be funny, But after that, I wasn't around for when they started booking him at events, and I don't know if they took him to strip shows or whatever they did, I just, Beetlejuice, spell the word red, and he'd say zebra. You know what I mean? He was a moron, Nothing against him. It's not his fault,
I love him. Scott the Engineer, he's a guy who's been cast off. Do you get a chance to talk to him? You guys trade some stories at all now that he's been let go the way he was?
No. I mean, I'm not out of contact. We don't talk or anything, but he was going to come to see my show down in the Palm Beach Kennel Club last December, but he didn't come, but maybe he'll come this year. I think he's got a new girlfriend and stuff. He was always a really good guy, and he did a lot of favors for me, and I did favors for him, when we were on the show, but we weren't really close, And I did plenty to break his balls because that was my job, but he liked that because the infamy helped him with his business, he was doing DJing at the time, or, whatever it was.
Well, talk about, the E! Show, he was a star. You have the push-up challenge, you have him screaming at Ganji, just him going nuts at Ralph, or that was, and then you guys would pop in and just completely, it was the machine that you talked about. It really was fun. Nancy Sirianni's in the movie, your wife, which is one of the top, if you go look at top 10 moments of the show, read them off, it's always your apology, which is way back in the day, but it's pretty funny. Tell me, just having her on and how you guys talk, and about that day of the apology. I mean, just
she is still. I mean, I saw her, a few hours. She was here. She lives 2 doors away. Her and her boyfriend, and her and her boyfriend are 2 of me and my girlfriend's closest, if not closest, friends. And, we still love each other. She's wonderful. She was a friend long before we were lovers and married and stuff like that. She's so great. And there's 2 complete chapters in my autobiography about that event because, the whole thing was portrayed so unfairly to her because she had nothing to do with it aside from getting mad at her boyfriend or getting mad at her husband. That whole thing. I don't know if you read the book, but we were scheduled to fly to Europe for 2 weeks. We're going on vacation, the show, and we're going to Europe for 2 weeks to see her sister get married in Paris, and then we're going to Venice. I mean, we hadn't been on a vacation like that ever. And we were supposed to leave, I think it was on a Friday, and I think that the funeral was on a Wednesday, something like that. And, it happened so fast, the thing with Jessica, it was such a joke. I mean, me and Howard were in the bathtub with her for probably 20 seconds. And, we're sitting around getting drunk. We drove to Philadelphia, and we're in Howard's suite. And I know I'm drunk, and Billy doesn't drink, and Howard doesn't drink. But me and Gary and Fred and John, we're having a great time. We're excited. We're going to have a big funeral to celebrate being number 1. And Howard, out of the blue, calls up Jessica. And she, of course, was in the suite right next door. Hey, Jessica, come on over and take a bath. And she said, okay. And so his suite was so big that it was down the hall, the bathtub. She's like, Howard, I'm in the bathtub. Come on down. And he's like, I can't go down there. My wife will kill me. And I said, well, I'll go because I figure I'm going to keep on my blue jeans and my underwear so there's no foul. So we go down there. A lot more. It was really funny because the tub was all drawn. Jessica's there in her bathroom, and the tub is drawn, and we threw Stuttering John in the water. And then when we pulled him out, the water was so filthy that we had to empty the tub and refill it. It was hysterical. And then she got in the tub, and she said, come on. So I took off my shirt or whatever, and me and Howard got in with her. I think he had on his underpants. I not only had on my underpants, I had on my blue jeans. We got in the tub, and I'm not thinking anything of it. Well, when the mics opened up the next morning at 6 o'clock, I don't know if I ever went back and listened to it, but Howard made it sound like it was a full-scale orgy, like unbelievable, like. And of course, my wife was not listening, but her friends were listening. So by the time it got Howard's version of the story related to Nancy by way of her friends, you know, I don't know what the hell she thought, but I just know I got off the air and she was on the phone, and I never heard anybody so mad at me. She was out of her mind, just out of her mind, and I didn't know what to do. And I got home, and I thought she was going to kill me. And it was really funny because she got in the car and took off, and I went to open my suitcase, and Stuttering John had put Jessica's wet pink negligee in my suitcase, which is a great, great stunt. But if I had opened that with her standing there, I'd be dead. You know, and I threw that thing away, and I called our therapist. We used to go to couples therapy. I don't think we were even doing it anymore. I told her the situation, and Emily, our therapist, said, Jackie, you got to get Nancy on that plane. Do whatever you can to get her on that plane. Once you're in that plane and you're on your way to Europe, they'll just all melt away and you'll be off on your vacation. And that was her. And so in my mind, I'm like, what could I possibly do? And that's what I came up with. And next morning, the first thing I said, Howard, turn on the mic. And off the top of my head, I just did the most sincere apology. And I really meant it because I really didn't think I had done anything wrong. But, you know, we all know what you think and what your girlfriend or your wife thinks. You know, everybody has a different interpretation. So I couldn't have been more sincere. But, of course, they played it like Nancy put a gun to my head and said, you better apologize on the radio. You know, so that was all malarkey. But meanwhile, we wound up getting on the plane and had the greatest vacation in the world. So, you know, of course, you would never know that from the show, but it had a really happy ending, and it was a really incredible. The funeral for DeBella it's so funny. Coincidentally, I think last Friday was John DeBella's last day on the air. I think he officially retired last Friday, which is how funny is that, you know? But
still doing it.
That's what happened. That's what happened.
You mentioned Stuttering John. He's in the film. You keep in touch with him. It seems like he's kind of gone off the deep end a little bit, maybe.
I was in touch with him, but I'm not really anymore. He can get pretty weird. I don't talk about it, but we were very good friends for a long time. You know, he wanted to. His girlfriend wanted to move to Long Island. He said, "I'm only moving to Long Island if we can move to Bayville." So they came to Bayville, and they lived here for a couple of years. And so me and Nancy and John and Susanna, we were very close, and we had a lot of good times. And he's a good guy. He's smart, you know. He's a hustler. He's okay. But, you know, I don't quite agree with everything he does, but not many people agree with the things I do, so who am I to talk?
Well, that's a good point. I love when you tell me a Robin story. So any Robin stories that come to mind? You two were so tight and so close and had so much fun as we wrap.
The funniest thing of late, she actually took me to lunch however many years ago, but she was trying to get me to join that forum thing or whatever thing that she's in. I was like, Robin, I love you, and you know, I'll buy lunch, but I'm not joining any wacka doodle, you know those groups, whatever. You know, you find your soul, and please, talk to people and be nice to people. That's all you got to do. But I do Cameo.com, right? And I've done, I don't know, 500, 700 of them. And people yell at me. They say, you don't charge enough money, because some people charge like $500. I don't know if you know what it is, but it's a thing where people pay money for you to do a little iPhone video for them. Like if your friend said, hey, it's Brad's birthday. Hey, Brad, happy birthday. And I'll tell a few dirty jokes and fool around. Maybe they'll give some inside information. I'll break your balls. And it's like 2 or 3 minutes. And I only charge $75. And the fans of the show they eat it up. They love it, they'll say, you know, they give me little snippets of things to say about this or somebody like this. Last week, a guy said it's my father's birthday, and me and him used to scream. My father's turning 85, and we used to scream when you read from Robin's book. I don't know if you know about that. He said, would you do that for him? And I said, you know what? That's the weirdest. And I looked at my computer, and I still had the pages I had scanned, because I'd actually taken a few pages and scanned them so they'd be easy to read on the air. And I went a little wild with it on his cameo. And the guy tipped me like $100. He was over the moon. But I got to tell you the truth, man, I thoroughly enjoyed doing it. We walked down the street, and my legs were so long. And my minis, oh, God, just hysterical fun. You know, it's just totally, everything comes out of goofing. You know, we were in a limo going to a movie screening, and the movie screenings we used to go to were like a couple of blocks away. But Howard couldn't walk, so 4, 5, 6 of us would pile into the limo, like Howard and Robin and me and Fred and maybe Gary, whatever. We're all jammed in there, and we're going a couple of blocks in midday in Midtown, so we're stuck in traffic. We're not going anywhere, and we're all like climbing the wall. And I had my bag, my canvas bag, and I looked down, and Robin had just given me a copy of her book. And I just reached in and took it out and opened it at random and started reading it in her voice, and they went bat crap. They went nuts. And, of course, then I did it on the air, you know, however many times before Howard realized I was getting too many laughs, and then we stopped doing that. But people loved it. It was really, and the more she got annoyed and the more she tried to stop it, the funnier it got. You know, just like with any of us. You know, once we get upset, you know, that's when the fun starts. You know, and you got to get upset. I always say if this town bully starts beating you up, if you don't say ouch at some point, he's just going to keep punching. So at some point you got to say ouch. That really hurts. Leave me alone. You know. Yeah. But me and Robin had some classic stuff. But if you look at the movie, you see us doing the bump on the stage with AC/DC playing, which is, you know, that was the brother-sister thing we had going, you know.
Well, there's a million laughs from your life. I want to mention there's a point where they were doing, you were gone by now, but she was getting swimming lessons, and they started doing the voice of her and Bobby the pool boy, and I just listened to it. It was from like 03, and Artie's on. It's just hilarious, and you guys were so funny, all of you together. Jackie, this is the point where we ask you to promote. We got your documentary, books, cameo, joke line. Tell me everything you want people to know here.
Well, my book actually got a pump a couple of years ago, and I didn't know why. Howard put out a book, and if you buy a book on Amazon, underneath it'll say people that bought this book also bought this book. And a real lot of the people of his fans, they knew nothing about my book. He never mentioned it. All of a sudden they see my books for sale, and they got their mouse, and they already had their credit card. So with one click, they got my book, too. I sold tons and tons of books. So my autobiography is called The Joke Man, Bow to Stern. And you can get a cameo video, which people love. It's cameo.com/Jackie Martling. And the documentary Joke Man will be available starting July 18th, at least on iTunes. And we're not sure what other. I think you start there, and if it gets a little attention, they start putting it up every place else. And it looks like it's going to get some attention. And I also answer every email I've ever gotten. So if you want to say hello or scream at me or tell me to leave Brad alone, email me jokeland@AOL.com. If you just want to call and yell at me for having AOL still, I don't care. I answer everything. And, you know, that's the guy. I did a lot of jokes on TikTok, but I stopped doing them because I wanted to wait until the documentary is out so that way I can put the link in when I'm talking about it, because I got hundreds of jokes on it. One of my jokes got 1.1 million views. 1.1 million people watch this, and I don't know how I got away with it because it's not supposed to be dirty on TikTok, and it's you know what? I'll email you the link. You'll laugh your ass off. You know, it's you know, some jokes get 10,000, and some jokes get 50,000, and some jokes get 100,000. It's all random, but they're all great jokes. So and that's all I do.
How do you know Mark Cuban? How does that happen?
That is the most unbelievable story. He owes me. He had already made a lot of money out in California, and then he moved to Dallas. And this is back timing. This is stuff I had no idea of at the time. I guess he went to Indiana State, I think it was, to college. And the Stern Show was going everywhere. And all of a sudden, we're on the air in Dallas. We became #1 right away. And everybody was calling us to make appearances. And nobody went. Robin doesn't go. Fred doesn't go. Howard doesn't go. Gary did some. But I was a guy that could actually go and do an appearance with them, but do a show and do a whole thing. So it was really worthwhile bringing me anywhere. And but at the time, whenever it happened, it must have been 94, just at the very beginning of the internet. And we were doing well, and we were adding more and more markets. So I'm at the point where I'm working all week, but all of a sudden, do you want to come work in Chicago? And they're dangling stupid money. Stupid money for me at my level of comedy. I'm like, how, they're going to fly you first class and treat you like a god and pay you well. But then that's the weekend. And then back to starting at 4 o'clock in the morning again. So, when I did a weekend, it was to make a lot of money. And the guys called me up from Dallas and said, listen, we really want to bring you out to Dallas. We love you. We think you're so funny. And we love the show. And we're starting up this company, and we really don't have money to spend, but we'll promote the hell out of you and do what we can. And I said, listen, guys, that's very flattering, but I can't go somewhere in a weekend for free, because it's hard enough to tell my wife that I'm going to Denver, for $15,000, So I said, you know what I'll do? I could send you a bunch of my stuff. What they wanted to do is, it was in the beginning, in the very beginning, the internet was text. Then they came up with the World Wide Web, so it looked like a magazine article. And then, there was more and more different kinds of type and fonts. And then they added pictures. This all happened in pretty rapid succession. All of a sudden, they're putting pictures up. And a lot of people had AOL 14.4 kilobytes, or whatever it is. It took forever to load a site. It took days to load a site that had any pictures on it. And Mark Cuban and his guys, I don't know if they were the first, but they came up with putting audio on the World Wide Web. And Mark wanted to be able to play the audio of college basketball games on his website. And it was called audionet.com. And, I forgot to turn up. Hold on.
No worries.
So let me finish. So Mark wants to put college basketball games, the audio of them, on the internet. And they wanted me to come out and help promote that. But I said, listen, why don't I send you all my stuff, and you can make an endless loop of my jokes. And they took at the time, I don't know if I had a CD out or a couple of CDs, and I had video. I had so much stuff. And they took all the audio of all my stuff from the beginning of time and made a 6-hour endless loop and played it. So if you were watching a basketball game, listening to a basketball game on audionet.com, and it went to commercial or halftime, I don't even know what it looked like. I think there was like a red button, and all of a sudden you heard Jackie jokes until you turned it off. And it made the thing really popular with the college kids, and it went to the moon. And then, I had no idea Mark Cuban's name wasn't in it, and I wouldn't recognize it anyway. And then, like, a couple years later, I see broadcast.com sells for $4 billion. And they say broadcast.com, formerly audionet.com. I'm like, holy Christmas, And then, Mark, and he acknowledged it. He said, well, he exaggerates. He said there'd be no jokes on the internet if it wasn't for Jackie Martling. But he sat in on the Howard Stern show after I left. And he said, yeah, Howard, I got to tell you, I really owe it to Jackie here. He really helped me get going. And Howard said, that's not Jackie, that's Fred. And then Mark said, well, when Fred was Jackie, he really helped me. He's a really good guy. And he emailed me right away and said, congratulations on the movie. So I have friends in high places that can't really do anything for me, but it's kind of fun to be friends with Willie Nelson and Les Paul and Mark Cuban and, even Penn Jillette, people like that, And the whole world has smoked my homegrown pot. That's another crazy thing, but we didn't put that in the documentary. If I gave you the list of people who've smoked Jackie pot, your head would explode, So I'm a goofy guy that doesn't really make much money anymore, but I couldn't be more eclectic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If it wasn't for jokes, I probably wouldn't eat,
Well, I just love that you just said you'll answer any question. I appreciate it because you come here all the time and we have fun, and we only have 40 minutes on our Zoom here, so I'm going to have to say goodbye. But you come back all the time. We enjoy this. I look forward to the documentary. You're going to buy the shirt here. You can buy these in the description. Jackie, always fun. I can't wait to see this documentary. Anything else you want to say to the folks?
No, email me the link to your shirt thing, and I would love to come back on once the thing is actually up.
Absolutely.
So that we could say, go there now. We can do 2 minutes. We can do, whatever you want to do. I'm here. I'm available.
I will find you. Yes, I'm available too, as we both are here in the middle of the day just talking about good old times and jokes, so I appreciate it. We'll get Jackie back on here soon. Thank you for watching. Thank you for ordering shirts, and we'll see you next time.